Nigel, after a very positive performance on Tuesday night, how big a step up is the challenge on Saturday away at Leicester?
Well, it's a tough game. I mean, they're doing very well. Had a good start, and we know that they've got a lot of depth to their squad, with much quality too. So, but it's not a game that we should go into and have any fears about. Really, it's one in which, off the back of our last two performances in particular, or even the last three, when you look at how we played at Swansea, how we played against West Brom, who are a very good side, and of course the other evening we should go into it with a very positive mentality, and I think the players will, or should do, enjoy looking forward to the game.
And we've asked you this season about the home form. The away form, what's been the secret to getting some positive results away from home so far this season?
Don't know, if I'm honest. We've just tried to be ourselves, and I think we are. We've shown discipline, but we've still been able to play to our strengths when we've either had the ball or whether we've played on the counter-attack. So I don't really sort of, you should know by now that I don't really get drawn into the sorts of emotional roller coasters that is very much the trend once the season starts. You know, I think there's a lot of calm in pre-season, and there's a lot of measured conversations about things, especially about how we play, etc. Then all of a sudden the results start have an effect on how people view performances, and I totally understand that, but I think for the most part we've understood where our shortcomings have been at home, where we've been probably not moved the ball quick enough and not been as positive with the ball. Certainly of late we've been better in the last two games, and it's sort of backed up some of the away performances in which I suppose we can afford to be less in control of the game. When you're playing at home, there is the element of you're on your own patch, and people would expect you to be as much in charge of the game as you can be. So again, I can't think for other people. I can only just comment on how we approach games, and that is we try and win every game. You know, we're not going to win every game, of course, but our intention is to go out in every fixture that we play and play as well as we can play.
And you talk about not getting emotionally involved. When you faced former clubs like Sheffield Wednesday and Middlesbrough, it has been another game to you. Is there any speciality to Saturday you're returning to Leicester as manager? Is it just another game, or will there be a bit of emotion, a few happy memories for you to look back on as you enter the field on Saturday?
Leicester's been a big part of my life. So I can't just sit here and talk about it not being an important part of my life. I have a huge connection. But look, there's four of us going back. I managed there over two spells. Dave Rennie was there for 25 years. Andy King was there for I don't know how long, a long time. Most of his adult career. Manny James has been there a few years. So all in all, there is a connection which is going to create some interest. But of course, you know what I'm like. It's about trying to be detached from that in terms of the preparation, and then of course when the game starts. But I can't deny that it's been a big part of my life and my family's life too. So I'm looking forward to seeing people who I've not seen for a while. But having said that, we still have a job to do, and we still go there collectively with our intentions of being as good as we can be. And if we play well and catch them on a day where things aren't quite right for them, then I think they'll be aware that can be a very, very dangerous side.
And if I say Leicester to you, what memories does that bring back? What happy memories?
Yeah, good and some not so good as well. But it was, I suppose, it was the first managerial job that I had a go at, or had time to try and shape a squad and a team of staff, and be a part of creating a culture, and I suppose very much as we are trying to do here now. That was the first place that I was able, along with many other people, to be a part of building something.
And if we move it on to Bristol City, a legacy and a culture.
Thank you for that. Let's move on to us.
Because that's what you're trying to build here at Ashton Gate, isn't it?
Well, we are. I'm not. I'm a part of it, and as the manager, obviously, I have added responsibilities. But it's not just a straightforward thing. It's an easy thing to say, but the reality of trying to build a positive culture and still have a side which is competitive, and you know yourself over my period of time here, there have been different paces to which we can change the side. That doesn't mean that just because you can't change the side that you can't change what happens within the club, because you have to turn your attention to other areas which are, for want of a better word, shapeable, mouldable. So yeah, I mean, I've been here 2.5 years now, so and a lot of the time here has felt like a bit of a slog at times, and there have been some tough times here, but I think there are some very promising signs at the moment that we are becoming what we intend to be. But there are always going to be setbacks. You know, you're never the finished article, and so the job always continues to stretch where we are.
In terms of team news, is Andy Weimann still on track to be in the squad?
No, he's not. No, he is on track. Yeah, of course he is. Yeah, he'll be in the squad.
And there must be a temptation to go for an unchanged team. We'll find out the team, of course, on Saturday. But what does that say about the fitness of your squad, that they could potentially play 3 games in a week and put in performances like they have so far this week?
Well, yeah, the style with which we play means there is added stresses on players, because you know we're not a side really at the moment who we can say we can carry people within the team. You know, and even some of the best sides in the country aren't really endowed with those types of individuals. There are some, of course, but you know, the best sides in this country still have very strong team ethics, and so our aspirations are to create that type of a team. That's not to say that there are days that you have that maybe 1 or 2 players are a little bit off colour, but because there is the team ethic which underpins what we do, sometimes you can deal with situations within the game without making changes. Clearly, I mean, over the last 2 games, we've used the bench in different ways, and the fact that we were able to use the bench earlier the other night does create a little bit of a, if you like, a buffer for those players who've started the last 2 games. But we'll just see how everybody is tomorrow again, and then whoever starts, whoever finishes, they've all got jobs to do, and that's the most important thing. It's about us being collectively ready for the challenge of playing against one of the top sides in the division. But as I've already pointed out, I would imagine that they have done plenty of homework on us too, and they will be aware of the dangers that that we can potentially cause them. So yeah, it'll be an interesting game.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, going to use Leicester in a question, but
Sorry.
based on what you achieved there, and based on what you're trying to achieve here, what parallels can you see? And I appreciate obviously different players, different club, 10 years ago, different championship, all that kind of stuff. But are there things? Is there an atmosphere? Is there an attitude within the club that is similar to what you fostered there?
It'd be easy just to say yes to bring the question to an end, but I don't mean to do that. I think that it's a complex one to answer, because what you have to always do is recognise what the starting point is at any club. So if you make the assumption that when you start off on at a club and you try and apply exactly what's happened elsewhere, then really you're not aware of what the job needs. There are going to be themes which run through, and those things are based on values more than anything. And okay, style of play is something that you can try to adopt, but it depends on the starting point. So we've not been in a position here, for instance, I'll give you an example, that it would be nice to say from the outset, yeah, we want a really high intensity side and do this, this is what we want to do in possession. And then you stuck with a group of players who can't do that. That's bad management. If then you still bang that same drum and try and adopt a system of play which just doesn't suit the players that you've got. You know, if you're at a club where money's no object and you can change players quickly, then that's maybe a different story. But you've still got to be aware of what the starting point is. And so my view on all of this is, what underpins it is yes, the culture and the atmosphere, for want of you've used that word, and I have as well in the past. You can create that and then develop the style of which suits the players that you have, and then you can tweak it and develop it as you go. So we've been quite lucky to still have in the building here players. If you look at players like Tommy Conway, Sam Bell, Antoine Semenyo, when he was here, those are players with pace, the explosive. Why wouldn't you play a style of football which suits them? Andy Vyman's an all-action player, and he's one of our senior players. So again, players of his generation are more able to and have a better possibility of evolving with the team, which is why it's really interesting when you've got senior players who look now as though they're really enjoying the football, because they fit into what we are, and it helps with how you recruit players too, when you know what you're looking for. But of course, during all that, during the transitional periods, then there is going to be the times that you have to have stopgap players that you bring in, and then they might disappear again. But it's not something that you can plan and it be absolutely spot on every sort of, if you like, every stop along the way. You've got to be prepared that sometimes that station might be closed. You might miss a stop, and that's where the flexibility of decision making and that's where the adaptability of the people that you work with needs to be real, and you don't just talk about it, you can do it. And so we'll talk for about a minute and a half on it. I could go on for hours about it, and I still wouldn't be able to give you an exact idea of what it really looks like, just because there has to be a adaptability to how you work.
How close are this group of players and the culture in the dressing room? How close is it to being how you kind of envisaged it, or how you wanted it to be when you first took the job over?
I don't know, because my views have probably changed as we've gone. Yeah. Just because I have to adapt as well. Because as I've already said, you might have a mental map of what you think it might look like, And then you'll get some things that either go in the wrong direction that you have to manage, and then it sets you back. Those setbacks can sometimes help you discover something that you didn't expect, which might be a better outcome. So, Carlos Corberán spoke last week about a clever reset of us. It was really interesting to hear other people talk about your team and our team in a way where they see it as being an improvement. And sometimes when you're involved in it, you don't notice the things that it's, familiarity actually sometimes doesn't necessarily mean that you know everything inside out. So it's all right to get different people's views on it. And so as you can tell how I'm talking, it's one of those where we're never the finished article, and as a player you're never the finished article, and as a manager you're never the finished article, because, well, if you're bright enough, you realise that there are always areas that you can adapt. And, well, I'm a different person to what I was 10 years ago. So I don't want to do what I've done in the past. It's no longer relevant.
How do you think you're a different person from 10 years ago?
I think that's a question. Well, I think I know how I'm different, but I think for people who work with me, so for instance, when I worked with Craig Shakespeare at Watford, which was really good for us to both work there, we'd almost flipped roles in some ways. That I was a lot more laid back, and he was a bit more authoritative, and but we really enjoyed working together because it was we'd both recognise the changes in each other, but didn't see them as being a problem, and so it's really interesting to you have to reflect on how you work yourself, but in essence, what doesn't change is, and I think this is where, going back to the original question of what really is building a club, like, it's about getting the backbone of it right, and what underpins it is like I say, the values. They're not really football things. They are life skills and life values, and that's really what can create success, or it can be the backbone for people to then go on and achieve success and keep achieving success, because those things don't allow people to if you like, hijack it.
Based on that, and based on you saying about more experienced players enjoying their football, Manny James kind of fits into that
very much so.
And without obviously the Leicester line as well. He was exceptional again on Tuesday night, and is having a really, really good season. He's always been very much, or always seemed very much an important player to the team, but also to the club as a whole. I just wondered kind of how you're thinking of him in what is his, what is it, the third season for the club?
Yeah. Well, he's the type of player that managers and coaches, staff appreciate, and so do players. And sometimes they're not always the players that strike you as being from the outside looking in as being particularly exciting in many ways. But he's always been a really good technician, and he understands the game, and but he needs people around him who suit him as well. So I'm pleased for him that he's doing well. I also think he's done very well since he's been here. Unfortunately for him, what he's had to deal with at times is setbacks with injuries, as have a number of our players here. And that's always going to be a part of football. But I think he's enjoying his football. He's more appreciated now, which I think is fair as well. And look, as a manager, he's somebody that I trust to do the job and affect other players in the way that we need to move forward. So, yeah, that's a good story. There's lots of. I don't think we have players within the squad now who aren't delivering in some way. And that's even some of the injured players. They are still contributing massively to what the place represents. And that's another aspect of what the previous question's all about.
Obviously, his contract's up at the end of the season. Is that something to see how you go, or is it something you want to get sorted earlier, or?
It's not something that's been discussed at the moment, but I am aware of a number of the players who are in that sort of category, and look, we will discuss them, and we won't let those types of issues become something that then becomes a fly in the ointment for us. So behind the scenes, we'll discuss all of that, and it will be dealt with at the right time. There's always an interesting sort of point where you want to keep players playing for the futures, but you don't want them to become, if you like, disconnected because they don't feel as though that's going to happen. So, I understand all of that, and that's all a part of how we manage the future. And certainly, if you look at in the midfield department, for instance, we've been well aware that we've got a if you like, in some ways, an ageing part of the pitch, which is important why you try and replace them and add to them while they're still here. So that doesn't mean that just because we've added 90 and if we get Taylor as well, which I think would be a great signing for us, you're almost like signing the next generation. Why the current generation are still going through their, if you like, their halcyon days of or you could even call it a renaissance period, because they're getting better still. They're still getting better. and you look at people like Naki Wells, you look at Manny James, they're very capable of becoming better still. And they're bright enough to recognise that, and will do something about it. So age for me is not important in the same way as playing a 16 or 17-year-old doesn't faze any of us in here. Likewise, if players can still do the job, why should we worry about what their age is if they're in the mid-30s? It doesn't bother me. If they're good enough, they can play. And that if you like, that sort of adage applies at both ends of the spectrum.
Last one for me, I saw Tommy Conway having a bit of a laugh at the game because Scott Murray was involved in the warm-up.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
Tricks, taking Max's clearances and team up and all that business. How is his recovery? Are we still
he's good.
As it was? Is that?
Yeah, he's well on track to be back sometime in October, which is great. So he's doing very, very well. I'll give you an update on Ross while we're here as well, because his surgery went very well, so that's a really good sign. But that doesn't mean that we get excited about it. The comeback date. I think at the moment the most important thing is surgery was good. He's very positive. Rob Atkinson's doing very well too. Eamon's on track. So we have a group of players who, for them it's been really difficult to be out the side, but they're all moving closer to hopefully what will be a positive outcome for all of them. And then we've got Andy back this week. So we've had a bit of a tough time with a squad which looks a bit lean at times, but actually the players have dealt with it very well. Look, and I don't want to tempt fate because you're always going to pick injuries up from time to time. But what we have to do is manage our own sort of emotions when we get them as well. It's not about getting too down about it. So we're okay.
Presumably, Damon, just quickly, he'd have a few under-21s appearances before.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said a few weeks back about this, that because he's been out for so long.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be just when players are deemed to be fit for purpose, if you like, for full training, that doesn't mean that you just expose them to the first team world, because he's got to reacclimatise. There's been some results this week where teams have thrown out their youngsters into competitive environment and they've been walloped, and in those types of fixtures you can do a lot more damage than good. So you've got to be very, very aware of the players' needs still. It's not just about being fit and go on, get them back out there. We have to make sure that it's appropriate for them.
Thanks, Nigel.
Pleasure.
Hi Nigel. You mentioned Taylor Gardner-Hickman.
Yeah.
So you think it'd be a really good signing? Obviously couldn't play against West Brom featured Tuesday night.
Yeah.
I just wonder what you like from him so far that you think is going to be a good signing.
Right age, good quality, adaptable. So he went on in midfield the other night. We've already seen him play at right back, and that's not his first position, but he's very, very capable, and he gives different types of quality in that area. I just think players like that are our future, in not just the short-term future, but beyond that. They are, at 21, he's got, because he is the right type of player for us, and I like what he brings in terms of his character too. I just think he's the type of player that you can continue to build and evolve around. So it's quite a straightforward answer from me. So I'm very pleased that we were able to get the sort of deal that we've got in place.
Yeah, and Jason Knight, obviously another new signing, is kind of hit the ground running. You mentioned Manny James just before in his role. I just wondered, obviously Knight's really good start is obviously down to his own ability, but how influential and instrumental do you think Manny James and Joe Williams have been to allow Knight to hit the ground running?
Well, that have had some impact, but he's a lot mentally stronger than that. He's a winner. So that's an easy thing to say. It's a hard thing to explain, but he brings more than just being a very dynamic, good player. He brings a mentality which is not necessarily a common thing, and so yes, he appreciates his teammates, and yes, they allow him to be more himself. If you noticed in pre-season when we played games, it took a while for him to get used to how we played because of what he was used to in the past. But he's a really good player, and again, the future of where we go forward from here, and that's really important. So the additions that we've made, we talked about Ross earlier with his injury, and so all right, I know it's a difficult situation when he's not actually made his debut for us, but provided everything goes well, again, another really good signing for us, not just now but for the future, and that's how we've been able to look at that profile of player now, because our senior players allow us to do that. It's a different equation to a couple of years ago, where you're waiting for players' contracts to run out, still trying to get the best out of them, and they have to feel a part of it, which is a difficult thing to do. But really what we're looking at is it's going to take 2-3 years to clear out some players who don't really fit what we want in the longer term. We're at a point now where we work really hard to get to where we are. That doesn't mean it always continues at the same pace, because as I've already said to James there, that what might happen is we discover something on the route that goes, well, that looks a bit better than what we've got. Let's try that. Or let's not experiment, because I don't really want to do that very much, but it's more about whether you allow natural evolution of the side to happen, and that's why it's important that none of us are too greedy and selfish with how we hold on to it. You've got to allow it to find its way sometimes, because once the players lead it. So going back to the Leicester question, right? Let's finish with. So that's saying you can't ask another question. Let's finish with going back to that, because by the end of sort of the time that I left, the players owned it. Even a year before I left, 2 years before, the players owned it. The players were able to drive the culture as much as the staff. What the staff did is the staff, I was going to say police it, but that's the wrong word. It's more about stepping in when need to, because the players did it, and it can be dangerous if you allow them too much leeway, but you've got to have a strong enough framework to allow that to happen. So we're not there, but a lot of people wouldn't agree with that. But it's something that I think I quite like seeing that. I like to see the players evolve, and I like to see the staff evolving too. And so it's about going back to what we are here, trying to get how the place feels to work.